Tanager Place and the Meraki Institute of Learning proudly present the Rise, Wellness, and Resilience series, centered on resilient parenting, cultivating your child's resilience. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, hi, I'm Tanya, and this show is an 11-part series digging deep into the Rise framework, covering the 4 core pieces of Rise, Wellness, and Resilience. This includes, first, R, relationships, how relationships and experience influence a child's resilience. Secondly, I, indicators of well-being, how we integrate research-informed elements to enhance the well-being of children. Third, S, social-emotional development, how we can increase the emotional intelligence of children through everyday interactions. And lastly, E, enhancements, how we can interconnect the whole child to offer the greatest opportunity for wellness and resilience. When we cultivate a child's wellness and resilience, we offer a bright place for children to rise. Rise through difficulty, rise through struggle, rise with the means to manage, restore, and grow. So, as a wife, mother, aunt, sister, daughter, and friend to many parents, I am thankful you are joining on this learning journey with me. For today's topic, we are covering safety, one of the indicators of well-being in the Rise, Wellness, and Resilience framework. You'll be hearing from Cassie Kehoe, Clinician Supervisor for Tanager's school-based program. Welcome, Cassie.
Thank you for having me.
Cassie, you're joining us today as a mother, a therapist, and you come with a lot of expertise as it relates to kids' mental health and wellness. So tell me a little bit about safety. What does this mean for parents who are looking to cultivate wellness and resilience in their child?
So I think when we look at the question of what is safety as parents, what we're really looking at isn't just physical safety. I think that comes to mind is I have to keep my kid out of harm's way. I don't want them to get hurt. But there's also these other aspects of keeping a kid physiologically and psychologically safe.
So Cassie, what I hear you say is there are a multitude of ways to look at this concept of safety.
Yeah, I think as parents, one of the things that we want to provide is a sense of predictability and consistency, and we can do that in all of the different areas of safety.
So what are some ways that we can provide that sense of safety in the home, Cassie?
So I think a lot about this actually, because my daughter, she's 2.5. So right now, this is a big thing at home. Really, the big thing that we do is kind of create these routines. One of the biggest ones that I can't even remember when we started was bedtime routines. So every night is really, really predictable and consistent. So for us, it's, we get ready, we put on our pajamas, we brush our teeth, my daughter gets to have some water. Then she knows that we're going to go into our room, we're going to read a couple books together, and then usually myself or my fiance will sing or rock with her. And that's really helped her know and expect this is how bedtime is going to go every night. I think for us that even helps over the hurdles of the fighting bedtime because there is that sense of predictability. There is, she knows what to expect. As she's gotten a little older, I think the big thing is that she wants to stay up late with mom and dad. She wants to, be part of everything. And just really giving her the kind of, okay, this is what's next tonight. It's time to get ready and get in our pajamas, and really giving her that space and consistency.
I love that idea of consistency and predictability. And I'm sure it doesn't mean that you can't be flexible or that some things change, but when I hear you talk about safety, you're right, I automatically think of this physical sense, but it's much deeper than that. It's this felt sense of I know what to expect, and the adults in my life, or my routines, if you will, are predictable, and they keep things almost maybe normal for my day-to-day being.
Yeah. I think it also really decreases some of the power struggles that we get into. I know like morning is especially one of those because as adults we are kind of on the go all the time. And so having some sense of routine, and whether that's, for us, it's like she gets a little bit of time to watch some cartoons in the morning. And then I'll say after that time, we're going to get dressed. And so just giving her time and space, then it's not we're fighting to get out the door, we're screaming because we're dysregulated. It's really just like, okay, I know I have to get ready to go to daycare. So I think it gives a lot of, it just feels really helpful for her. And then I also don't feel rushed, and I'm not kind of fighting with her about how things are going.
So really that almost giving warnings and setting up for transitions and allowing countdowns, those things is what I hear you say really give that sense, that felt feeling inside of that safety and predictability.
Yeah.
Cassie, one of the words that I heard you say earlier was norms, and that's a different word. I don't know that that's a commonly used word. So what does norms mean, and how does it connect to the sense of safety?
I think of it as just sort of like what we expect at our house. So values, or, what are things that we as adults are going to model to our children that we would want from them. And so I know for us, like the biggest things that we kind of talk about and the words that we use all the time are being kind and caring and gentle. And that's because we have 3 animals. And so we are really working hard to give some voice to and words to the things that we would expect my daughter to exhibit, but also that mom and dad are always going to do. So that in a time where maybe things don't feel safe, or maybe at a time when, my daughter isn't having a good moment, that she knows mom or dad are going to be kind and gentle with her, just like we would expect her to be with other people.
So those norms are essentially expectations that we orient around in our household, and that when we know what those are, it deepens our sense of safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it just really helps her understand that no matter how I'm acting, my mom and dad are still going to provide this sense of caring and kindness, and that they love me unconditionally, because we all have moments and we all act in a way that sometimes we're like, ooh, that was not a great example, but we can repair that.
So Cassie, what are additional ways that we can help a kid feel that sense of predictability beyond maybe just routines? I'm guessing there are ways that I can interact with them that help them feel that sense of safety.
There is this idea that as parents, we really work on setting boundaries and limits for our kids, but we also provide them with a lot of support. So when we're kind of interacting with my daughter and teaching her about the world, because she's still 2.5, we really want to provide a sense of level of support that equals the same level of limit setting and teaching of boundaries. Because these kids come into the world not knowing any of that stuff, and to have those match really is empowering for children. It gives them a sense of cooperation, and it gives them a sense of voice, but it also allows us to help them, and they better understand why we're setting limits and boundaries for them.
So almost like what I hear you saying is doing stuff with our children, not necessarily to them or at them or for them, but there's this balance that the level of expectations I have for my child matches the level of support that I have for my child. And that when we can match those two things, we allow the greatest sense of safety and security and predictability in their world.
Yeah. I think sometimes those other ones that you just spoke to can cause a lot of anxiety for kids. If they don't understand why we're putting expectations, or they're not feeling like we're attuned, or we understand why they're responding in a certain way, it can really cause a lot of big emotions for a kid.
So I just think of if I say, bedtime is in 5 minutes, bedtime is important because we have to take care of our bodies in order to have good moods tomorrow. That's kind of what you mean by explaining some of those things so that kids can give reasoning and understanding to the norms we have.
Yeah. I think there's been a sense that parents are we just say, because I said so. And that was never a good enough answer for me as a kid. I always wanted to know why. So I just think it's really important to give them that sense. And And that teaches them, about the rules, and especially because that's going to go into other parts, not just at home.
Wow, Cassie, this is such a powerful concept, and I'm guessing so important to children's development and almost this like core piece to who they are and actualizing that well-being that they have, that if they don't feel that sense of safety, I'm sure a lot of other pieces are hard to actualize. What I'm really curious about as we get back is how we can continue to cultivate a sense of safety in our children's life. I really want to dig deeper into this when we return.
Tanager Place is here for children, teens, young adults, and families as they navigate the many stressors of the world today. Tanager inspires, empowers, and heals by providing tools and support needed to navigate the hardships of life and overcome obstacles. Our expertise and specialty trainings offer a wide range of approaches, and we'll join alongside you to create solutions to enhance your wellness. We are here for you and your family, virtually or in person. Tanager Place, your child, our focus.
Cassie, we just learned about safety as one of the indicators of well-being. Now let's dive into this idea of really cultivating this in our children's lives. Tell me more.
So it's not just about creating a sense of safety in our actions and the things that we do, which we touched on, but it's also being able to help children identify safe people in their lives and maybe places or spaces where they can feel a sense of safety.
So what would be some examples of a safe place, either at home maybe or at school? What does that look like?
What we created for my daughter was what we call her calm down corner. And it can look a multitude of ways, but really it's a corner or a place where you can have tools for your child to calm down. So in our house, we have really soft blankets and really soft stuffed animals, some sensory type things that she can kind of manipulate if she wants to. We're really big proponents of time-ins for her and not timeouts. And so the difference really is that we are tuning with her during a time where things are disrupted. Sometimes she doesn't want mom there, and that's okay, but I have an eye on her. And when she's ready, a lot of times she'll ask me to come sit next to her, and we can just talk about whatever experience she was having.
So I'm guessing this is different than like go to the corner, you're in trouble, or you're not listening, go to timeout. And I've heard other people talk about that creates almost disconnect and a lack of sense of safety, and kids then don't feel a sense of control over their lives. So I'm guessing when you talk about this concept of time in a calm corner, it's less about maybe the consequences and more about, is it teaching or what does it do?
Yeah, so I think that it can cause a lot of anxiety and disruption with kids if we're kind of consequencing them for having emotions. And so, I think one of the things that I've done when I've worked in schools is talked a lot about this, that if we're starting to see a kid get upset and they're just in a place where they need to take a break, that it's not a, hey, you're in trouble, but this is just a moment so that you can take some time to yourself. And if you need some assistance or you need some extra love for whatever, reason, that's okay. And it gives us just the ability to then talk about it, because when kids are upset, they're not going to talk. And that doesn't mean there aren't consequences to behaviors, but we really want to get them to a place where they feel safe and they're willing to have those conversations.
Because I'm guessing we need to feel safe first before we can learn from those behaviors. So what I hear you saying is it's creating that felt sense of safety first so that we can get them to a place in their brain, I'm guessing, to really learn and develop different behaviors ongoing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not in a place to learn anything while they're dysregulated. And so that also just lets them know that we hear them and that we are there for them, even in moments where big emotions are happening.
But what about if a grown-up isn't around, a caregiver, a teacher, a parent? How can we cultivate that in kids, that sense of safety in other settings?
Sure. I think one of the big things is just having conversations about who are safe people. We do this with my daughter because she goes to daycare, and so, we've had conversations about like when she's gotten owies, like who do you go to if you have an owie, or who do you go to if another kid is making you feel sad? And so she, at 2.5, can identify adults and that make her feel really safe. And And I think it's just being explicit with kids and giving them the ability to say, this is a person that's really helpful for me, especially in schools, because they spend the majority of their time in a school setting. So I think just helping them build a relationship, whether that's a past teacher, the school counselor, or, there's lots of trusted adults that will surprise you who kids choose.
I love that. And I'm guessing beyond just the trusted adult, because that's such a core element, that there's trusted peers, there's trusted places within other environments that they can go to. But is there a piece also about cultivating your child's voice? Like, I see books out on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for kids, like My Body, My Choice. And there seems to be this movement of teaching kids at a very young age how to advocate and use their voice to feel safe.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I think first we model that all the time. Like, we just need to be able to, ourselves as parents, tell how we feel, have the ability to just, when we are kind of feeling upset or angry, that we use the words that we would want kids to be using. But I think books are a beautiful way for kids to connect. Sometimes taking it off of them and putting it into more of a metaphor or into something that is like, oh, there's other kids that feel this way, is really helpful for young children. I think also that books are really powerful. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of books that talk about being assertive and talking about when things don't feel safe. How do you, tell an adult that doesn't feel okay? We just want kids to be able to say when things are going wrong.
I love that, because it's such a shift from kids are seen and not heard and they need to stay passive and quiet to this kids are fierce and they can advocate and they have a voice and they're empowered in order to have those skills that we certainly want to see within them as adults and in the professional world. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm curious about, though, Cassie, is I think sometimes for my kiddos, it's easier to feel safe at home. You have your siblings, you have your bedroom, you have your parents. But especially as my little one went to kindergarten or other places like school, how do you create that sense of safety there? And is there something I can do as a parent to work with my school to help increase that sense of safety?
I think, at least in the schools that I've been currently working in, there's been a really big shift in this. They've really kind of latched on to this idea of restorative practices in their classrooms. And so one of the things that I love is that they've been doing community circles. So this is really just like a check-in in the morning where all the kids come and they sit down, and the teacher usually has some kind of prompt or something to elicit a conversation. The beauty in that is that it is allowing kids to just say how they're feeling. So a teacher can be more aware. Like, if a kid comes in and has had a really rough morning, then that teacher might be able to say, okay, I might need to spend a little bit more time with this kid today, just giving them a little bit more love and also a little bit more grace sometimes. Maybe we will see a little bit of behavior from that kid because there's other underlying concerns. But I also think it's nice because then there's this liked, shared feeling between the students, and that, if there was a conflict between two students, they can kind of work it out and talk it out and have support from their peers and their teacher.
I love that. So the sense of community and using my voice and feeling heard and valued and cared about, those things help me feel safe. That when times in which I don't feel safe and I have that community, I have people to go to.
And I think it's really wonderful because sometimes there's kids that don't always speak up, and that gives them the opportunity to do that. They don't have to either. And I think that's also an empowering choice to be able to say, you know what, I don't really feel like talking about this right now, and being okay with that.
I love that sense of having control being a direct correlation to my felt sense of safety. Wow, Cassie, such good information. Really paying attention to how we can cultivate this safety for our children. When we return, I want to start to get into when kids don't feel safe, right? When they're even saying, I don't like this, or I don't want to go, or those feelings come up in which they're trying to avoid situations or people, how we can return back to that sense of safety and what we can do as adults to repair any harm done that may have happened. I'm excited to hear more.
No matter the challenges you and your family face, Tanager Place is here for you. Our team of specialists in mental, emotional, behavioral, and social health want to join alongside you during these tough times. Tanager will offer the tools needed to inspire, empower, and heal while providing the support you need to build the strongest foundation for success and wellness. We'll meet you wherever you are in your journey and together define a path to reach your goals. Together we rise. Tanager Place, your child, our focus.
Cassie, we just learned about safety and ways that we can cultivate this in our children's lives from a more proactive stance in our routines. But what about when kids aren't feeling safe? How do we get back to that sense of safety and repair potential harm done?
Yeah, I think that our job as parents is that we need to work with kids no matter where they're at, and there's going to be times when they experience some kind of maybe unsafe event. I think particularly this year for kids in Cedar Rapids, that's a big thing that happened with the derecho.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's just a transition that's going to be happening, whether that's becoming a new sibling or changing schools, and or sometimes there's just conflict between kids. And so it's our job to just be able to help them get back to that sense of safety and try to repair whatever harm is done.
So let's talk about that. Let's just use derecho as an example. For those who aren't aware, right, we had a seriously significant storm here in the Cedar Rapids corridor area, created a lot of damage to our community, a lot of damage to houses. And so I am sure for kids, that shook up their entire routine. And I've heard you say safety is this felt sense of routines, predictability. After that, there was none of that. And so what about when things can't be consistent or we have this shakeup? What do we do?
Yeah, sometimes that's even hard for us as adults, right? I think that we try our best to just allow kids a space to talk about that. I think there's been some really beautiful work done in the schools this year with that, and just allowing kids to say how that felt. Like, what was that experience like? And then just trying our best to, have some predictability and talk about transitions or maybe what these changes might look like. In our home, we had lost power for 2 weeks. And so it was really hard, and our routine was different, right? There was no lights to go on at night. There was no sound machine for my daughter, which she loves. So really having to shift, but just talking about it, preparing her for those differences was really, really helpful.
So almost like the sense of, the storm was scary, that was hard, we have no lights, we may not have our fun noise at nighttime. What are other things we can do to fall asleep? It's really just talking about it and honoring the kids' feelings and just acknowledging what those experiences are in the moment.
Yeah, and I think sometimes for us, small changes might seem insignificant, but for a kid that could feel really big. And so making sure that we validate that, whether that's how we perceived it or not, it's their perception. And so I think kids really value that, and it feels really connecting for a child to hear that you hear what I'm saying and that you care about me.
So I'm guessing there are times though that relationally, I, as a parent, made you feel unsafe. I think about times, and I'm embarrassed to even admit it, but it's the real part of parenting, I yell or I get frustrated or, so how do we get back to that felt sense of safety if mommy was kind of scary?
Yeah, we're all guilty of that. Kids try our patience, and, my daughter, this is my first child, so I'm learning, right? I'm learning all the ins and outs of it. And, I think it's just being able to admit our mistakes, and usually it's just having to repair that. I think repairing is just as important as keeping them safe, because it teaches them that life sometimes is going to throw you some wrenches. So for, my daughter, there has been times where I have yelled, or I've said some things, or I've said, go to your room, and we don't do timeouts. In the moment I was frustrated, and I say, mommy was really frustrated. I'm really sorry that I yelled. Mommy shouldn't have yelled. And then I kind of reiterate those norms again, that, in our house we're kind and caring, and that was not part of what mommy wants to do. Those aren't the things that mommy wants for you. And whether she responds or not, she hears it, you know?
Yeah, it makes me, you telling the story makes me think of now, my kids are a little older, and so they'll say, you're a meanie, and so I'm guessing it doesn't help them feel safe if I just say, don't call me a meanie, right? That there's a level of, yeah, it felt that mommy was being mean. Mommy was being mean when she felt so frustrated, and I should have taken deep breath. It's about validating that feeling that when I created the sense of lack of safety in that moment, that whatever feelings they had as a result of that are their feelings, and there's no point to argue, there's no point to try to tell them that their behavior was why I was being mean. Yeah.
And I think that that's modeling that we have big feelings, that sometimes we need to also use those skills, that we need to go take a deep breath or take a break or whatever it is.
Cassie, such great information. Safety is certainly complex and more than just this element of I'm physically keeping you safe, which helped me recognize a variety of things I can do as a parent to increase this felt sense of safety through my relationship and through my kids' everyday interactions. So thinking about one or two key points for those listening to walk away with, what would they be?
I just think the biggest thing is that we have lots of different ways, and we probably do it every day, that we keep our kids safe. So like you said, not just the physical parts, but the psychological and the physiological pieces of safety, and that it's okay if we have mistakes or if we experience harm in our relationships, as long as we can also repair that.
I love it. Cassie, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise. Thank you for joining back with me again. We wanted to take a moment during this show to highlight a very, very important topic as it relates to safety. In frankness, it relates to each section of the RISE framework, but I want to highlight it in particular in this section as it directly influences a child's development and wellness. I was watching a series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, and in one of the segments you hear young Black children talk about their fears every day living as a person of color. Their fears for their loved ones who are Black being killed, their fears walking alone, their fears going to the park, fears my white children of privilege do not have to face, fears heterosexual children often do not face. I deeply believe that we cannot sit here and talk about wellness and resilience without talking about how racism, unacknowledged privilege, and inequality influence many people in our communities. I believe it is our responsibility to be a part of the change, to find oppression, find racism, find hatred, and stand up to it, to teach our children a different way of being, and to fight for all children to live in a better world. Creating safety for our children starts with us doing different and being different for those who need our voice and our action. Thank you for being with us and taking time out of your day to learn alongside us in order to offer a bright place for the children in your lives to rise. Today's series brought to you by Tanager Place and the Meraki Institute of Learning. For more information, please visit our website at www.tanagerplace.org.